July meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. And first off, we have public comment. I have one speaker card for public comment, Ralph Hoffman.
Ralph Hoffman, downtown Walnut Creek, where there's quite a bit of construction going on, North Plaza.
Well, I went to high school and in my early career lived along the Gulf Coast, from Florida to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. Back there, we used to say it's not the heat, it's the humidity. And it turns out here in the Bay Area now this summer, in addition to record heat for the first 6 months, we have high humidity. And this is probably an unanticipated effect of climate change, in that the cause of the high humidity is simply increased temperature of the Pacific Ocean. And by the way, I would not suggest spraying insecticide on your body, because that could cause skin cancer. However, with the high humidity comes a lot of insects, including biting insects like mosquitoes and certain other biting insects, which pass along rather serious diseases. You've probably read about these, and I just wear long sleeves, long pants all the time. I see most of you do too. But that's one way to be safe. You can spray grass, but not anything you would be eating or yourself as a precaution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. We'll move on to approval of summary of actions from our June 25th meeting.
I move approval.
I second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, two abstentions. Okay, quick review of the attendance log. Anyone have any updates or corrections to the attendance log? Move on to the meeting calendar. And in keeping with the normal practice of the authority, there will be no meeting in August. So we will next get together at our September meeting on September 24th. Finally, are there any corrections to the CAC roster? Hearing none, we'll move on to our first major discussion item, which is a review of the City of Clayton's calendar years 2012 and 2013 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. And we have Mr. Mullen here from the City of Clayton.
Good evening.
So Mr. Mullen is here to answer any questions the committee might have.
Good evening. I'm Charlie Mullen with the City of Clayton. I'm the Community Development Director, and just want to introduce myself and say thank you for hearing our reviewing our checklist this evening. And on behalf of the City of Clayton, we're seeking your support and recommendation of approval. I'm here to answer any questions if there are any.
Yes, Mr. Mullen, thank you for coming. I was wondering if you could maybe just give a quick overview of the City of Clayton. It's kind of like tucked aside there, and I don't know how many people are really familiar with what it comprises. Is the Oakhurst Golf Course a part of Clayton, as I understand?
That's correct. Oakhurst Golf Course is part of Clayton, and it's within our city limits.
Is that the major portion of Clayton, or is there other substantial residents? Or
Well, our population right now is around 11,000. So we're one of the smallest communities in Contra Costa County. Budget-wise, we are the smallest, and staffing-wise, we are the smallest. Our tax base, while we're trying to build it, is below the other jurisdictions within Contra Costa County. So funding like we're asking for this evening for street improvement programs is very vital to our operations and improvements that take place in our city. So that's why we're here this evening, and we put our best effort into this report before you to ensure that we're successful at getting your approval and funding authorization.
Great. So a couple of questions I had was looking through the report, and I'm going to refer to the handout that we received for the CAC for any page numbers. But I was curious about looking at the progress report that was sent to HCD. It was alluded to that Toll Brothers elected to satisfy the requirement for free affordable housing units through the purchase of off-site units within the city. Could you elaborate on this, specifically whether these units were supposed to be constructed or were constructed, and if who, by when, by whom, and when?
Correct. There is the project, although we don't have an inclusionary housing ordinance, we have housing element policy that encourages all development to provide affordable housing. Our provisions ask for 10% affordable out of each project. This project triggered and provided 3 affordable housing units. The project originally was established and developed by Lemke Development. They actually went out, and the agreement in this case was to purchase housing units and then sell them to low-income families and subsidize that purchase. So the developer, the original developer, bought 1 unit. They stopped the project, and Toll Brothers picked it up and completed the project, and then they purchased 2 additional housing units in Clayton and resold them to low-income housing.
Yeah, because I didn't see that reflected in the charts of your progress report. I saw 1, but I didn't see any others. So
The reason was they were over a period of years.
I see.
And so it wasn't all reflected in one reporting process.
Yeah, well, there was a summary from like 2007 to 2013, and I only saw in that posting that there was just 1 affordable unit that was permitted.
Sure. I think in our in the staff report that went to our city council, we kind of summarized that so we could capture it. And so there's a little bit more detail in the staff report. I'll have to see if I can.
Well, that's the chart, and it only shows 1 unit being permitted, not necessarily constructed, but permitted.
The two questions then, these were what were purchased were already existing units somewhere. That was question number one. And question number
That's
two is,
correct.
are they deed restricted so that they stay affordable?
Yes, all three of them had deed restrictions with a 45-year lifespan. The provisions of the deed restrictions allowed them to resell it. The city had first right of refusal. When we had a redevelopment agency, the authority was given that first right. Where the city is now the successor agency. The unfortunate problem with the demise of the redevelopment agency, we lost our funding sources for our housing programs. So most likely we would opt for the second option in the agreements to keep them affordable, which is to resell it to an affordable family.
So that's because my next question was going to be about the demise of redevelopment agencies, how you were going to, this is a common problem. This is not unique
It
to
certainly
Clayton.
is.
But the fact, I was just kind of wondering, so you're going to, it seems that you just have a policy to require 10% affordable housing, but not anything that's part of that's not a regulation or an ordinance to do that.
That's correct. We are actually looking at an inclusionary housing ordinance, but there's been a number of court cases, Santa Clara and San Jose, that are throwing into question inclusionary housing by, unfortunately, the development community is challenging those cases. And so our attorney is elected to wait and see how those cases come out.
Yeah, it seems to be a big problem, and my last question is...
So we're trying to be proactive in it,
Yeah, it sounds...
but balance, it's a balancing act.
I know. It's something I think the state legislature is going to have to figure out because, they threw out, redevelopment agencies were such an important vehicle for providing affordable housing. And, you're not the only jurisdictions that's struggling with how to do that. And to me, we look at all these reports, and it just strikes me at how little affordable housing is being built. That there's a lot of moderate, above moderate, housing. And I just think that that's going to be a problem down the line. I'm just kind of editorializing here, nothing to do with Clayton. But
I think I've worked throughout the Bay Area for San Ramon, for Hayward, San Bruno, Foster City. And I think for a small community like Clayton, we're actually doing an admirable job at trying to achieve and provide affordable housing. There's been, with the redevelopment agency, there was a success at subsidizing and providing second loans for seconds to buy down the value of the home so that the loan amount that the homeowner took out could be subsidized by a second from our redevelopment agency. And then we have the Diamond Terrace Senior Housing Center, which is a large affordable housing project for seniors.
Well, that's great. And my last question, it was mentioned about the Universal Design Ordinance. Could you elaborate on what that is?
Sure. That is it's a provision for developers to follow, to put in, for example, handicap showers, access hallways that are accessible for wheelchair access. So it encourages the development community to include housing types that provide design features for elderly, for handicapped persons with disabilities, so that group can be accommodated.
Now, would that be every unit would have to follow this design ordinance, or would it just be a selected percentage?
It's the state law does not mandate all development to do it. There are some affordable housing provisions, some design provisions. The state law mandates that you develop an ordinance and you provide the development community with those criteria so that they can follow them.
Okay, but it wouldn't be every unit. It would just be
correct.
Great. Well, that's
they have to design it for every unit, but they don't have to put it in. They have to make it an option when they build the home for a buyer.
Okay, great. That's all I had. I was satisfied with Clayton's response from the get-go. that there's really not that too many issues in your town, and you're right. It is a well-run city. So
Hopefully, as the economy continues to improve, we're getting more interest in housing development, and our discussions with our development community is to make affordable housing a component of your project, and work with us on that, and we've been successful at that approach.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Mullen, what motivation did you have to give the vineyards or in that area that has all that solar and electric savings and stuff that they're building into their housing?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Is it called the vineyards? That's Trilogy. Oh, I'm sorry. Got
okay.
the wrong town.
Okay. I was going,
Now-
wait, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, no wonder. Now, was Diablo Acres
Diablo Estates.
is that above moderate?
It was sold at market rate, which is above market. Correct.
Okay, because I was
And-
wondering where you
And that's
noted
where we that development did provide 3 affordable housing units as a component of it.
Okay.
And that's where they purchased other property.
It didn't register except on one chart.
Okay. We'll see if we can make that clearer in the next.
Okay, thank you.
A question on that second mortgage assistance, was that in the form of cash, or was that the city providing a low-cost loan?
It was in the form of a loan, and so if the property sells, that's why where the city's vested interest in the property is to maintain it as affordable, and so that rolls over to the next buyer. There's a formula for escalation that allows the affordable buyer who originally purchased it to receive some benefit from the price valuation, but it has a cap on it so that we can continue to buy down the loan and keep it at the. Most of them are in. They're not all low or very low income. There are some moderate, so there's a variety. Sure.
Any further questions on the part of the committee?
No, I just want to remark that I thought you did a very complete job in charting what you have done over 2 years period. I don't get that every time to
Okay.
get where you can trace what you've done over a 2-year period. And you give your report to the state every year. You give an annual report to
Correct.
the state, which is remarkable. That's what everybody should do.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, and I appreciate your feedback. So that this is my first year at doing it for the city of Clayton, and so if there's any, I appreciate the constructive questions. So that the next time we go around, we'll try to address those issues. And I know what you're looking for now.
We are very concerned about housing.
I can see that. Thank you, and I'll make sure that we fully address it and focus on that as a component of it, even more so.
Move to accept?
All right, it's been moved to recommend acceptance of the City of Clayton's review by the Transportation Authority. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Steve, before we move on, I'd just like to make a comment about Clayton's maintenance of effort. If you notice, it was 0. The reason for that is that the maintenance of effort was set way back in the 1980s. The idea was that the tax money that was coming in from Measure C at the time was not supposed to be substituting for other money that the jurisdictions were spending. So the reason why that was maintenance of effort was put in was because of trying to make sure that any additional tax money was for actually improvements and not backfilling maintenance. And Clayton at the time was not a city in the 1980s. I think it was incorporated like 1994, 95.
It was incorporated in 1964. I was trying to research that too and figure out why that was zeroed out.
Well, it didn't have any housing.
Maybe Martin knows.
Yeah.
See, maybe Martin knows.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Martin Engelmann, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And having been here a while, I can tell you why Clayton has a zero maintenance of effort, even though they were incorporated prior to 1987, 88, 89, when the maintenance of effort requirements were set. And the reason is they had all brand new roads.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't have to invest a dime in maintenance during the period of time when we estimated the maintenance for Measure C initially. So their requirement is zero.
Yeah, and actually, that was this is kind of one of my pet peeves, which doesn't mean anything anymore, but when Measure J was being looked upon, I kind of made the argument that the maintenance of effort should be reevaluated, but they were kind of frozen. The net effect of that is that they're almost meaningless now because looking at inflation and the fact that some jurisdictions like Clayton weren't spending money, just about every jurisdiction meets the criteria. So it's just kind of a little history lesson there.
Okay. Move on to 2.2 in the agenda, review of the draft 2014 Countywide Transportation Plan update and the public update and education and outreach plan.
All right, Mr. Chairman, it's me again, Martin Engelmann. And I have a brief presentation on the CTP for you tonight. And we're going to do, after this, Lindsay Willis, our Director of External Affairs, is going to present to you the public outreach effort that we're going to undertake during August and September. So I'll start with the history of our program here in Contra Costa. As you know, the voters approved Measure C in 1988, and that established a half-cent sales tax to fund a variety of projects and programs throughout the county. It included an innovative growth management program. In 2004, the voters approved an extension of Measure C that went from 2009 to 2034. All told, the two tax measures together have generated over $3 billion in revenue. The last time we updated our countywide plan was in 2009, and since then we've had some major accomplishments. We've completed the fourth bore of the Caldecott Tunnel. This is a $417 million project, saving commuters 3,850 hours a day in delay. Every year that equates to 160 person years of delay that's been eliminated through this project. We've widened Highway 4. We're about halfway through this project. It's a $383 million project that's nearing completion in 2014. We've built HOV lanes and auxiliary lanes. This is showing them on 680. Total of $66 million invested. We've invested in parking at BART. Here's the West County BART station, a $34 million project. Built 780 new spaces, 150 which are new. And we've developed intermodal transit centers at Hercules. The one here shown is the newly opened one at Pacheco. And finally, we built a new pedestrian overcrossing at Treat Boulevard. That's a $12.7 million project. All told, these accomplishments involve $1 billion of leveraged investments into the transportation system. Regarding programs, we've had a number of programs that are ongoing with Measure J, and they include local streets and roads. 18% of our funds go to local streets and roads. We put 10% of our revenues into bus service and express bus, 5% for transportation for livable communities, 5% for safe routes to school. We have a program for bicycles, pedestrian, and trail facilities, investments in programs for transportation for people with disabilities, and also a key program that we have invested in is the growth management program, which I'd like to tell you a little bit about. The growth management program is designed as follows. The basic principles are that it assures that new growth pays its own way for any traffic congestion that it creates, mitigates that congestion. It creates a process for cooperative planning, managing the growth through discussions among the cities. It establishes a countywide urban limit line and supports efficient infill. And it also requires development and update of a countywide transportation plan. So we've done a plan in 95, 2000, 2004, and 2009. The CTP is the building block for, the action plans are the building block for our countywide transportation plan. The action plans are developed by each of our regional transportation committees, West, Central, East, and Southwest. It identifies a system of routes of regional significance, and that system carries about 80% of all the traffic and sees probably 90% of all the congestion. We ask that the local jurisdictions establish performance measures for the regional routes. These are called multimodal transportation service objectives, or MTSOs. And then the jurisdictions are asked to develop actions for achieving those objectives. It also establishes procedures for review of new general plan amendments. You're familiar with that. If a jurisdiction comes in with a new general plan amendment, the local jurisdiction has to determine the impact of that on ability to achieve the objectives. The plan we're developing looks 25 years into the future, out to 2040. So it's a 25-year look ahead, and here are some of the challenges we can see. We are still growing. We see a 27% increase in population by 2040. We're expecting to build 3,000 new homes per year and 4,000 jobs per year. And these forecasts are based on the latest MTC Regional Transportation Plan adopted in 2013. It's interesting to look at the jobs because the jobs are really dispersed differently throughout the county. If you look at the different regions, there are a lot more jobs in Tri-Valley coming in than there are in, for example, La Miranda, and that tends to concentrate the traffic in certain areas. We know that by 2040 traffic is going to increase. It's not the same in every area. There are some places where it increases as much as 75%, for example, between East County and Central County. And there are other areas where it's fairly stable, increasing only 5 or 10% over 25 years, for example, on I-80 and I-680 to the south. Another challenge we face is reducing greenhouse gas emissions to comply with SB 375. And we believe that we've done that. We've gotten the 7% reduction by 2020 and the 15% reduction by 2035. But we really have to go further than that if we look at the governor's executive order for all types of construction and all types of homes and businesses. We have to reduce our emissions to bring them down to 80% below the 1990 level, and that's what this chart shows. It's a very ambitious undertaking to achieve this, and it goes way farther than the reductions called for in SB 375. We're taking a number of actions to meet these challenges. We're continuing to implement the growth management program, enforcing the urban limit line, funding transportation for livable communities. We're in this plan, the 2014 plan carrying forward the sustainable community strategy. So we're growing housing near transit and jobs in so-called priority development areas, or PDAs, so that people can live near where they work, get to retail by walking and bicycle rather than driving. And if they must drive, we hope that they'll use a clean technology. So we're very supportive of alternative modes of travel, funding electric vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles. We're not done with all our projects yet. We continue to build new projects. We're finishing Highway 4 east all the way to Hillcrest, which includes HOV lanes and a traffic operations system, ramp metering, and we hope to really smooth out the flow of traffic on Route 4 east for those that live in East County and commute into Central County and beyond. We're working on a BART extension, so-called E-BART, out to Antioch, which should be completed by 2017. And we continue to fund our programs, our bus, our paratransit, and this shows a picture from one of our innovative ride-sharing programs called Karma. We really think innovation is the key, so we're exploring alternatives such as bus rapid transit, all-electric vehicles, and out there on the horizon somewhere is the autonomous vehicle or the driverless vehicle that you've heard about. Let's take a moment to look at what's inside the CTP. It's guided by a vision, and the vision is to strive to preserve and enhance the quality of life of local communities by promoting a healthy environment and strong economy to benefit all people in areas of Contra Costa through a balanced, safe, and efficient transportation network, cooperative planning, and growth management. The transportation network should integrate all modes of transportation to meet the diverse needs of Contra Costa. So it's a multimodal approach to the future. We have goals and strategies. The 5 goals are shown here. Promote efficient, safe, reliable movement of people and goods, manage growth, expand alternatives to the single occupant vehicle, maintain the transportation system, and when we do expend our Measure J funds, spend them wisely. How do we build the CTP? It really starts with all the local jurisdictions. There are 20 local jurisdictions. They send one elected official to the table at each of their regional committee meetings, create these action plans for routes of regional significance, which have our quantitative objectives and outcomes, a draft CTP, which we're going to fully vet through a public outreach process with a number of workshops, telephone town halls, and a web-based engagement tool. And after we've circulated the CTP, we go to the final, and that feeds back then into the final action plans. When you download the document, it's a good 500 pages long. It's 3 volumes. All the interesting stuff is in Volume 1, so if you're going to read it, read Volume 1. And that includes the vision, goals, and strategies, an overview of the transportation system, how we do our cooperative planning, and implementation of the projects and programs that we have underway. Volume 2 is a compendium of the 5 action plans that were developed over the past 2 years by the sub-areas, West County, Central County, East County, and La Marinda, Tri-Valley. And then Volume 3 is kind of the universe of projects and programs for Contra Costa. And we have what's called the CTPL. Here's a new acronym for you. The Comprehensive Transportation Project List. Any project that has a cost estimate and a sponsor is in that list. And that's it's got over 1,200 entries now. And that's the basis for figuring out how much funding we need in the future. So what we've learned from this exercise so far, we have funded projects and unfunded projects. And this map is a little hard to read from a distance, but the green projects are essentially funded and the red ones are unfunded. And you can see there's quite a bit of red on this map. Some of the unfunded projects, I-80 San Pablo Dam Road interchange, where we need $60 million more to complete it. The I-684 interchange requires another $226 million in funding. Highway 4 operational improvements is over $250 million in funding needed to improve Highway 4 further east of I-680 and 4. All told, this is $500 million in unfunded projects. There are also some big-ticket items out there that are unfunded. This is showing the extension of EBART from Antioch to Brentwood. That's a $608 million project. And a little bit further out on the horizon is so-called TriLink SR-239, which would be a freeway connection between Brentwood and Tracy, so that when you're coming up I-5 and I-580, this would give you a direct access up to SR4 and Brentwood and Antioch and points west. There's also a transit component in here. Not including the transit component, this project is $750 million unfunded. So if we add together all the project needs, the total comes out to $11.6 billion. And if we look at how much money we have over the next 25 years, we've identified $4.7 billion in funding, and there's a shortfall of $6.8 billion still needed to complete these projects. So that's the basic picture we've established so far through the draft CTP. And the process we're going to go through in the next couple of months is ask the public, did we miss anything? Have we captured all of the projects that are out there? And we're going to have an opportunity for people to give us their feedback on any new ideas they may have that we might have missed. The schedule for our 2014 update is to release the CTP at the end of this month. The formal review period will be 60 days during August and September, and also during that time we're going to release a draft environmental impact report. It'll be a supplemental EIR, SEIR. We'll pull together all the comments during October and November, and we're heading for a December adoption of the plan by the authority. Then in January 2015, we can start setting priorities and narrowing down the shortfall to a reasonable amount where we can put together a project list for the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan and also possibly look for new sources of revenue, such as an extension or augmentation of our half-cent sales tax. So I'm at my last slide now, and I just want to tell you about our public participation tool, how you can participate during August and September. This online tool will be open to the public, and you can go in there and give us your feedback on what you think Contra Costa needs to improve its transportation. We will have 4 community workshops, 1 in each of the sub-areas, and there'll be other public forums involving all of our community groups and stakeholders. So that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just real quick, Martin, can you, the online tool is going to be available in August. Can we have emails saying how to get linked to that?
I'm not going to steal Lindsay's thunder. She's going to tell you all about the online tool. She's actually the next one up. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the CTP, and then Lindsay will present to you the public engagement strategy.
I'll wait for her.
Peanut butter and jelly tonight. Martin and I are sharing the presentation.
With growth management being one of the main goals of the Transit Authority and the countywide transportation plan, I remember not too long ago there was a recent Senate bill that pretty much took away our effort to restrict growth because of traffic impacts. I forget what that Senate bill was. I was curious how we are going to be approaching that.
I think you're referring, Daryl, to SB 741.
Yeah.
And SB 741 eliminates the use of level of service in environmental impact reports. The legislation said within transit priority areas, but I think the legislation is going to go a little further, and there'll be new guidelines for EIRs which say that you can't use level of service as a threshold of significance in your environmental impact reports. And this has raised a number of questions and issues. We're really still working through those, but we think since our growth management program is really based on multimodal objectives, it's not it's not purely level of service. We can continue to use that, and we can also continue to use traffic impacts and congestion as a measure for developing general plans and developing traffic studies. It just, when it comes down to the EIR, that's where it'll no longer be a threshold of significance, and it can't trigger a findings of significant impact.
And my second question was, I remember we were talking about the vision statement, how there was a lot of concern about locals' return to source funds and trying to increase monies for maintenance of streets. Maybe I missed it in the CTP, but I was wondering, are we going to be increasing the amount of money going to local street maintenance?
Well, that's a good question, Daryl. At this point, we don't know. We think Measure J will stay at 18%. It's actually 18 plus 2, 20% of the Measure J growth proceeds go to the local jurisdictions for streets and roads. And if we were to develop a ballot measure for an augmentation or extension of our sales tax, the percentage that would go to local streets and roads is yet to be decided.
I have a couple of questions. On this Complete Streets project, which was just wonderful, and the safe routes to schools. I was reading recently where the definition for a safe street to schools has to adopt a way to get there without being shot by a gun on the way. And that doesn't happen everywhere, of course. But I was hoping that when you work on the local manifestation of a safe route to schools, that they consider which routes are safe for the kids to get to school without being shot at. That's just a minor thing, but it's something I noticed important these days. Another thing, too, that's recently new is that the fact that global warming is actually getting warm, and they're expecting our weather to stay warm as it is this summer and last summer, probably going on in the future. And if so, it would affect the amount of greenhouse gases that are accumulating in the atmosphere, because the absence of moisture in the atmosphere, aside from being humid, it allows things to get hotter. Moisture in the dirt and air and so on cools down what we get through the air. And therefore, as you said, the state law now requires more greenhouse gas control than you had anticipated. But you must remember, too, that if we continue to have these hot years, that'll be affecting what we are able to gather in the air. Also, I'm curious to know how the Iron Horse Trail can become a regional route.
Well, that's a number of comments. I'll take the last question and tell you that because of the emphasis on SB 375, reflection of sustainable community strategies, we heard from one of our regional committees that they want to designate the Iron Horse Trail as a route of regional significance, and also from another that they want to designate BART as a route of regional significance. That was essentially in the SWAT area that was done. And at the last authority meeting, they adopted a policy on how to address that. And I could elaborate on the policy, but essentially it says that the regional committees can go ahead and make those designations. However, for the time being, for this draft countywide plan, the authority is not going to formally adopt those routes And when we get to the final, we'll see how we proceed. But at this point, the non-motorized regional routes and the transit regional routes are going to be left at the RTPC level, and they can set up their own procedures if they like for actions and collaboration. But at the countywide level, we encountered some resistance from other sub-areas to doing that. And essentially, it's a challenge because all of our procedures look to regional routes being roadways, surface streets, freeways, highways. The mitigations for the traffic can certainly be multimodal. We can encourage BART ridership. We can encourage bicycling on the Iron Horse Trail, but the route itself is not a designated regional route. So it's an issue that's come up, and we're starting to address it. We'll continue to discuss it.
What's the benefit to the Iron Horse Trail being called a regional route? What benefit does the trail get?
Well, I think the thinking behind it is to put the non-motorized routes at the same level as the motorized routes and get them front page billing so that they're not forgotten, and so that they can start setting objectives for them and actions for them and achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. For example, on the Iron Horse Trail, they want to build a few overcrossings in San Ramon and Danville, and so they can establish objectives for that and actions.
You mean like bridges over the arterial?
Yeah, Sally, actually,
as we have at Treat and Ignacio.
Yeah, I can answer some of your questions. So, like San Ramon right now is trying to undergo a lot of renovation and trying to create our downtown San Ramon area. We're building new retail areas.
Mm-hmm.
We're building a new library. We're building a new city hall.
Yeah.
We're changing all of our parks and everything
Right
like
next to the trail.
Right next to the Iron Horse Trail. And one of the main reasons why we want to get the Iron Horse Trail as a route of regional significance is that it'll help with funding. Because the Iron Horse Trail is right next to this downtown area, we expect there to be a large usage of this Iron Horse Trail in order to get to and from the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, coming from San Ramon, we want to get that on there.
Clayton, in their report today, also mentioned having their trails regional routes. I'm not sure how they would. Maybe they want to have their trail covered with a bridge or something. I'm not sure.
One thing, too, with regard to the Iron Horse Trail, if that was made longer, because it just kind of peters out at both ends, so it'd have more connectivity. And it's really, since it's essentially flat, it's actually really, really easy to cycle on. So lots of people, different level of abilities, can use that trail without any real strain.
Yeah, I know. I see it. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. On page 2-229, you have listed other under table E1. What is other? It shows the past and the upcoming, so I was just wondering what's included in the other.
That's a good question. I think there are a number of operations and maintenance projects that don't fit under a particular category, and they're captured here.
I must say I was very impressed with the work that the staff did. And I also noted on the other one, sorry I forgot to flag them because I ran out of flags at home, but there was something where you had the list of all the funding, and I noticed that you had innovation. So is innovation similar to what you're doing on the I-80 multimodal corridor by is that considered innovation or not? That's on 2.2-30.
Yeah, that's the general idea. Innovative techniques towards managing congestion, but it applies to all modes. And we're at the very beginning of looking at improving traffic operations through smarter, cleaner, quieter vehicles, and we're also looking to improve BART access and BART parking, and parking within cities. So everyone's going app crazy. So the innovation part includes apps, and also includes things like the I-80 Integrated Corridor Mobility Study or project.
There was also a little cross conversation between Daryl and myself. In Richmond, we had some lengthy discussions about level of service some years ago, and in the way that level of service considerations can kind of skew how priorities are set. So you have a street that gets busy twice a day for a half hour, 40 minutes, which causes some backups at that time. Then the rest of the time, the amount of traffic on it is extremely light. So where do you put your resources? Do you change your street so that somebody doesn't have to wait through a light change, or do you do something else?
Martin, one other quick question. It mentioned in the report about people telecommuting from work and how your percentages went up, I think, from 1% to 5.6. My question is, what additional incentives is the authority thinking about taking to increase that even more?
Well, that's a good question, and the jury on telework is still out. You'll recall Yahoo recalled all of its workers who were teleworking and said, get in here, we need you here to collaborate and to be with us. Where it really affects our analysis is if that trend were to continue out to 2040, it could be 20%, and if it goes to 20%, that has a huge impact on our traffic forecasts. So we encourage use of technology. We encourage TDM. We support the 511 program, which has a very active telecommuting program. So we continue to fund all those programs. Where they'll go in the future, though, we don't know. Whether it'll continue to increase at the current rate. It's kind of limited to white-collar jobs, telecommuting. I mean, obviously a carpenter has to show up at the job. We're not sure how far up that curve is going to continue.
Can I ask if you had been considering using DVDs, distributing them to explain to the public what you've been hoping to do?
Well, we're beyond DVDs, Sally. We're looking at a narrated PowerPoint that's going to be on our website. And so what you just saw here as we evolve this PowerPoint.
Are you going to show those at the workshops?
And this will be part of the workshop presentation. It'll continue to evolve and be modified. And we hope to have on the website a show really where anybody can watch this presentation and hear the narration. The DVD part, we're having a very limited printing of the draft CTP, but we envision the final CTP we will have, we'll publish, if we do print it, volume 1 only, and then in the back will be a CD or DVD with volumes 2 and 3. So that'll keep the paper down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to have 2 workshops, one of them here and one of them at Lafayette? Or
right now we're going to have 4 workshops.
4?
Yeah, one in West County, Central, East, and Southwest, and Lindsay will tell you all about that. That's part of the outreach presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I had a comment about Volume 1. I thought that Lindsay was going to cover that, but you had kind of alluded to about how the driving patterns are changing because of the advent of the job market in San Ramon. I would like to make a comment to you that you consider putting a paragraph in there about how do we get to work to show that how the commute patterns have changed over the last 30 years. Before, the jobs were pretty much in San Francisco or local, but now with the addition of the Tri-Valley job market, that's impacting the patterns. had mentioned that, but I think it should be highlighted.
And how do we get home from work? That's also important.
No, if you're in a .com world, you don't go home.
Well, if we're finished with Martin's portion of the presentation, why don't we go and proceed to the education and outreach portion? Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair and committee members. For those of you who don't remember me, since it's been a few months since I've been before you, my name's Lindsay Willis. I'm the Director of External Affairs here. And I'm here today to talk to you about the public education and outreach efforts related to the countywide transportation plan process. Thank you, Martin, for not stealing my thunder. We are tied at the hip in this process. You may have heard me tell you earlier that I wasn't mic'd, that it's like peanut butter and jelly. So Martin and his staff are working really hard to put together the countywide transportation plan. And my job, and what I'm here to hopefully sell you guys on your job, will also be this summer, is to really help get word about this effort out to the public and really invite them to be part of this process. This is something that's a little bit new for this agency. Although we've done several countywide transportation plans, we've never really put a significant budget behind the outreach efforts. And so at the June meeting, the board approved what I think is a very healthy and robust budget for public education and outreach, to invite the public to really be part of this process with us and weigh in. And I know this is a very conscientious group, and you usually read your packets, so I'm not going to really go through it. What I'd like to do today is show you some of the stuff that we're talking about. You're actually getting a sneak peek. A lot of the artwork has come in the last week, and you're seeing it before most of our board members. But I think it's really helpful to kind of see some of the items that we talk about in here. So I want to start, a big portion of the plan, and excuse me because I'm clicking and talking at the same time. So let me pull up the screen. Okay, so you may remember this screen and saw it in Martin's last slide. A big portion of the public outreach that's going to happen this summer/fall. So when Martin releases the countywide transportation plan on or around August 1st to the public, concurrently with that, we're launching a crowdsourcing online participation tool. And we're inviting the public to join us online, weigh in, give us their ideas, tell us a little bit about what's important to them, and suggest their bright idea for the future. The plan, I like to say, is a little bit inside baseball. We're very familiar with the projects in here, and the action plans are put together by folks who are very knowledgeable about transportation. And there are some very wonderful ideas for our future in here, but there may also be some wonderful ideas in the community, and we'd like to hear everyone out. And our goal is to do more than just public workshops. And actually on page 2.2-8 is the schedule of the public workshops that we'll be hosting. The West County group hasn't quite yet decided on the date and the time that we'll be hosting theirs in their sub-region, so we'll be updating this for you. So we will have a dedicated URL. It will be something along the lines of Keep Contra Costa Moving, which is our tagline this year. And when you get there, you'll see this welcome screen to let people know that they got to the right spot. It's got our logo on it, and they can learn more about the countywide transportation plan, and they can just get started. So if they choose to get started, they will be taken to this screen, and I'll scroll down more, but I tend to scroll really quickly, so I don't want to make you dizzy. I'll just talk through it a little slower than normal. They'll be able to kind of do two things. They'll be able to kind of rate their transportation priorities on a very general level. This is a little bit of a straw poll, not very scientific, but you will remember that in February I was here and we talked about the polling results done by our consultant. They did focus groups and telephone surveys. So this is just kind of a second check to see if the priorities identified in that scientific survey kind of match as we roll a similar tool out online, or if we're reaching different people than the telephone poll, if those priorities change dramatically. It also allows people to suggest a bright idea, and that could be anything. I already know what I plan to suggest, and Martin's going to try not to roll his eyes, but I happen to think a gondola over Mount Diablo would be a fabulous way to commute to work every day. And the point of this is really that no idea is too big, too small, or too crazy. This is really, we want people to kind of dream big. 20 years ago, a fourth bore through the Caldecott Tunnel seemed like a pretty hefty lift too. So I think my gondola idea has merit, but feel free to suggest whatever you think would be a wonderful idea. So this is really the top of the page.
Although on your ideas there, I got it very quickly, is as somebody who goes to the MacArthur BART station virtually daily, and after the opening of that bore, it's very hard to see much of a difference in what those cars are doing.
This is actually my favorite part of the tool, and it will be a little more towards kind of the bottom of the page. The tool is really designed to be interactive, so you will be able to see suggestions that your neighbors have made, that people in the community are. You'll be able to sort it by what's most popular, what's most recent. You can choose to like other people's comments. We're trying to keep this very positive. So we're not allowing people to comment on other people's comments. We're not allowing people to dislike other people's comments. So your choices are to view what your neighbors are saying, add your own idea, like other people's ideas, and there's a share feature on there. So you can post this to your social network, send it to your friends, and say, hey, I just took the survey. Here's my bright idea. Why don't you weigh in with yours as well? If you try to click on anything on that page, you will get this little very nice and polite message letting you know that we are going to require people to log in. And we did go through a little bit of discussion about this internally because personally I know for me, once I have to log into something or create a login, I'm not so inclined to continue because it takes up more time. But we really felt for this, because we're asking people to give us their opinions, and in order to make sure that we're not getting spammed, that we're getting very valid answers, we are asking people to log in. We're trying to make it a little bit easier, so if you have a Facebook login or you have a Google Plus login, you can log in with those features, and if you don't, you can create a login. And part of why we're making people log in, as you have heard, the internet is very amazing and can do many things. One of the things that we're asking it to do with this login is we're actually verifying zip codes to make sure that people who are sharing their ideas really are in Contra Costa, and we're getting input from our residents because we are planning to go out to community groups and different organizations and ask them to share this with their members. We will be doing online advertising, and I'll get into that shortly. So this is going a lot of places, and we can't necessarily limit that to Contra Costa, but we want to make sure that the ideas and the suggestions we're getting are truly for and from the people who live and work here. You'll see one of the other things we're doing up at the very top. I know it may be hard to see because the screen is a little small. Once people have logged in, that little box that says, keep me informed of CCTA news and updates will automatically be checked for them. We're being a little sneaky. They're going to have to uncheck it if they don't want to be added to a new email newsletter list, which we're creating. Since all of you are in our system as getting the Citizens Advisory Committee packets, you have all automatically been added to that list, and hopefully you'll see our first e-newsletter sometime in August. And at that point, if you choose not to get it anymore, you'll be able to unsubscribe yourself. I promise not to spam you because I'm a department of one and I don't have that kind of time, and I'm sure you don't either. So what we will do is those two kind of top priorities, my transportation priorities and my bright idea, you are able to submit as many ideas as you want, and that's part of having people log in. If you've got 50 great ideas and time to type them all out, we'd love to hear them. If you have one, that's great. You don't have to submit a bright idea at all if you don't want to. Excuse me 1 minute. However, you will only be able to submit your transportation priorities one time. And part of forcing you to log in is it will remember that you already did it. And the next time you log in, you won't even see that screen anymore. Your screen will just look like this. And part of that is because we don't necessarily want to skew the results on that kind of your top 3 off the top of your head. We really want your gut reaction. And the reason at the very beginning that we have both of those options kind of side by side and with equal weight is because we know people are very busy and they may just want to log in, see the tool, take 1 minute and say, these top things are my favorite, and that's it. Or they may choose to spend more time. So we wanted to create something that gave people whatever option they chose to take. Of course, we hope people spend a lot of time and give this a lot of thought, but we know people are busy and we didn't necessarily want to create something that required them to spend a lot of time on it. So this is a little bit of an overview of the tool, and I wanted you to see this because a lot of the other supporting pieces really point back to and center around the online tool. But again, not everybody is online, so that's part of the reason we're having public workshops. So we'll have in-person workshops in each area of the county. Those workshops will also have a station where people can sit down and fill out the tool at a computer right there with the workshop with a staff member walking them through it, or they can choose to submit their information some other way. So I'm going to show you those real quick. So you'll see this is a printed survey, and it has a very similar look and feel as the tool. But what the advantage to this is we'll be printing multiple copies of these. They'll be available to you upon request, to the board members upon request, to any community groups upon request. And it's a prepaid survey where people can essentially answer the same questions that were in the tool, what their priorities are, what their bright idea is. It tells them about us. It tells them where the workshops are. In addition to the in-person workshops, we'll also be hosting a telephone town hall where people can call in if they can't make it to the event in person. And then if they choose to submit their comments, they can just drop this in the mail at no cost to themselves. So this is something we'll be printing in both English and Spanish. And we're creating, the reason I'm showing you this, and I probably should have started with this, is we're creating what we're kind of calling a stakeholder outreach toolkit. And it is copies of a lot of these pieces, or how to obtain hard copies of these pieces if you need them, as well as social media posts, sample newsletter content. And there's one other item that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But we're hoping to be able to give not only to our board members, but to each of you kind of this packet of information about how to spread the word and invite people within your circles to participate in this. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So that's why I'm glad you checked to make sure everything on the roster was correct, because that's what I will be using to give all of this to you. And of course, when you get it, we'll have all my contact information as well. So if you have questions or you need information. One of the things that we're doing that's very new for the authority, and I promise this is the last thing I'll show you, and then I'll take questions. For the first time, we're doing online advertising to also get people to use the tool. And as I told you, the internet is very amazing and you can do really wonderful things. So just like when you go to the Target website or the Costco website and you look at something and then that pair of shoes, in my case, follows you around the internet, and you see it in the ads everywhere you go, so too will this. So people who visit our website, people who are searching for things related to transit and transportation in Contra Costa will be served up this online ad to take the survey. And as we get closer to the public workshops, The public workshop ads will also start following people around, alerting them to when the public workshop is. We're also mailing a postcard in each sub-region, about 60,000 postcards per sub-region to households in that region, letting them know when their in-person public workshop is, when the telephone town hall is, how they can obtain a copy of the printed survey, and where to go to take the survey online. So this is a pretty hefty outreach process. I think it's something new. It's the first time we've really put a lot of effort behind the countywide transportation plan, but as Martin explained, this is really important because this is the base for how we move forward. This is identifying all the needs we have, and this is really what we're going to kind of build upon in the future. So I'm sure some of you may have some questions, and I'm happy to answer them. And I know this was kind of a very brief overview of all of the different elements, but they're still being worked out and tweaked. As I mentioned, the board members, all of them haven't even seen this yet, so don't tell them I showed it to you first. But we're really going to be asking for your help and for you to be an active part of this process as well. We're going to try to make it as easy for you as possible. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Do you have a projected date when you'll roll out the website?
We're targeting Friday, August 1st. It will be either that Friday or the Monday following, and I'm not really sure. I think that's the 4th,
It'll
3rd
be
or 4th.
like keepcontracostamoving.org or something
It'll
like
be keepcontracostamoving.net.
Net.
Do you have a list of the most popular or most used social networks?
Yes. For here and kind of the demographic we've been targeting, which are folks who voted in the 2012 election, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn are really the 3 most popular sites. That's not to say that there aren't many other sites that quite a bit of folks use. We're really kind of focusing the pre-canned messaging that we're providing on Facebook and Twitter because we know that is most of our board members use those 2 mediums. Most of our partner agencies at least have those 2 mediums, and we figure if we provide content for those, that folks who want to choose it across any medium can kind of use that as a base.
Have you identified what the younger folks are using? I know they're moving away from Facebook, and some of the others are moving to some other thing, but 18-year-olds can vote, and they do drive and cause accidents.
Well, we actually have a summer intern this summer, and he has been starting to get very involved in this as well. So he's looking at how to kind of reshape some of the content. One of the things that we've been talking about is not necessarily in terms of networks, but people are definitely paying more attention to videos than they have in the past, and that's a medium people seem to respond to a lot better. So as Martin mentioned, we are creating kind of like a video narrated PowerPoint about the CTP. That will be something that's available that people can post, and we're playing around with how to kind of potentially expand upon this. Since this is the first time we've really made such a concerted effort to reach a lot of diverse groups that we haven't in the past. For example, this is one of the first times we've done a lot of our printed materials in English and Spanish. It's kind of one of the first times we don't really have a giant list of community groups, so that's also probably something you'll be getting an email from me from asking you, what are the groups in your communities that you think we need to reach out to make sure they're aware of this process and be part of it. So this is really kind of the first building block here, and we're starting with a lot of things, and we're trying a lot of things to see what works, and then hopefully we'll be able to kind of refine and move forward from there.
Have you considered city council meetings? I don't know if each one of us could make a citizens to be heard statement at our city council meetings and hand out the surveys. Is that something that can be done?
We would absolutely love that. it's been suggested to us that we should make ourselves available to the city councils, and we're happy to do so, and we would love even more if you would be willing to make yourselves available to the city councils. This outreach effort is actually, it starts August 1st and it ends September 30th, so it's a pretty short period of time, and we're trying to get out in front of as many people as possible. That's part of the reason we're creating the narrated PowerPoint, because that could be something that you could take to a city council and introduce yourself and say you're part of the Citizens Advisory Committee and play a short video and not have to really say anything in the video. We'll tell people how they can participate, and you've got the packets. So that would absolutely be wonderful if you'd be willing to do that as well, because people are getting tired of seeing just Martin and I all the time.
Well, if you have something we can download off the website, that would be simple and easy, or we could just run it with a laptop or a tablet or something.
We could definitely make that available and or get it to you on a flash drive or something if you wanted a backup and you didn't want to have to rely on a Wi-Fi or internet connection at a city council meeting.
I have a question. Why do you ask Spanish? Do you think this is a big margin of Contra Costa County population doesn't speak English? Or uneducated? Most people, Latinos, I have friends, they speak fluently English.
They do. I think we talked with the actual county of Contra Costa and said, if we were to do this in another language other than English, what is the most kind of commonly spoken other language in Contra Costa? Or what are people's first kind of native language that's most popular if English is their second language? And Spanish is that language. And the county itself does quite a bit of its outreach material in both English and Spanish. And for us, it's actually not really much of an extra cost. So we thought that might be a good way to reach people who maybe feel more comfortable expressing their ideas in their native language. And we're going to try it, and we're going to see. It doesn't, I think, do any harm to try to be as inclusive as possible. And if we find that nobody is taking advantage of those Spanish language resources, then we can decide if we need to use them in the future.
Because there are a number of folks who may speak English who are native Spanish speakers, but they may have trouble reading or writing in English. So I think having it in Spanish is a great idea.
I'm thinking about illegal immigrants who don't speak English or don't write English. Most people here in their job, except maybe some gardeners or others low-paid job, they are fluent in English, in writing, and speaking.
That is not necessarily true. I can speak for my experience in Richmond, where you have people who are educated, meaning they're completely fluent reading and writing in Spanish, but are not fluent in English. And the population of Latinos is dense enough that they really don't have to be. They can get by just fine having very, very little English.
What do you mean educated?
Meaning they're formal, meaning they've gone to school and get graduates or have have enough, if you will, book learning that they can read and write perfectly well literature that's in Spanish, but they don't have a good grasp of English. They are not functional in English. So we have a significant population of those people who are running stores, running their communities, and they're not fluent in English.
Press them to learn English. Instead, helping them in this way.
Well, you speak with an accent, so maybe people like me will have to. People like me will have to learn the other,
Accent is different. Even Henry Kissinger has German accent.
Well, I hope to be back before you, probably either in the late September meeting or the early October meeting, and I'm happy to report. I can do a report on, how many printed surveys in Spanish or postcards in Spanish, and I can kind of give an update on what the usage was of our Spanish language materials.
Yes, I have a comment. You say it doesn't cost much. Yes, it does cost. they're not learning English. You're not supporting the development of the English language in their conversation. So there is a cost, and that cost is immeasurable right now. But drive down some of the streets in San Francisco and see the difference.
I stand
helping.
corrected. Thank you. I meant in terms of cost of printing materials to the authority.
I actually would just like to commend you on the great work that you're doing. You know, I love the website and I love all of the materials here. I know that when I first came onto the Transportation Authority, trying to navigate the homepage of the Transportation Authority website, it's not very user-friendly. It's not very modern. And so I really like what you've done here. I just wish it went on for longer. You know, it's only a 2-month period, and I understand that it's just a trial period, so we're trying out many new different things. You know, it's okay to spend a little money for the first time and then see if it works, and then later on we can start cutting back. Like, if no one uses those Spanish materials, we just won't do it ever again, you know. But I think for the first time, let's try it, let's see, and we'll see what happens. So I think you're doing a great job, so thank you. And hopefully we can continue doing this for other things other than the update here.
Okay. If we're done with the questions and comments, Mr. Hoffman, you submitted a card on this item.
Town Walnut Creek. I guess I could make my remarks in Auf Deutsch or in Espanol, but I think I'll stick to English right now. As a first-generation American, I do can speak in 3 languages. As far as Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, I personally prefer LinkedIn. I use all 3, but much more. LinkedIn and tweets are limited in length, and Facebook is not as safe as LinkedIn. To give Martin and this young lady some verbal feedback before the survey, I'd like to give you some of my pet peeves and bright ideas. This has to do mostly with walking and biking, which are much healthier to do than driving, quite simply. That's part of the problem of obesity we have in this country is not enough walking or biking done. But I would like to talk about some of the pet peeves that I have about the risk of walking and biking that I see as a walker. And a senior citizen walker, by the way, who walks slower than young people. First of all, technology has given us distracted driving and also distracted walking, whereas mostly the younger people are using iPhones or whatever when driving, and walking very difficult to enforce the law to get them not to. And this has a very serious effect on crosswalks, unguarded crosswalks, or even crosswalks by traffic lights. It also, some sidewalks are being used by bikers, even though there is a bike lane that they can use. So bikes can cause injury like cars can, not quite as serious, but we have had some deaths in the county from pedestrians being hit by cars, whether they're in unguarded crosswalks. Also, jaywalkers, quite simply, I feel are an indication that their locations, maybe if there's a lot of jaywalking where we need a crosswalk, one doesn't exist right now. In California, we have such a thing called California stops, where people roll through a stop sign, and yet because of cutting of law enforcement, many of these things are, while they violate the law, they're not being enforced. We need solutions to these things, I believe, too. My worst complaint are the unguarded crosswalks. At least we could have flashing lights there, and it's difficult sometimes for a driver, particularly if he's distracted from seeing the crosswalk lines where there's no flashing lights or something. And I would hope we would spend more money than is currently allocated on things for walkers and bikers, like sidewalks and crosswalks. Thank you.
The agenda says action on this, but I believe the only action to be taken is what we did was to hear out and ask questions of the Martin and Lindsay. I don't know that there's anything for us to approve.
Well, what, Steve, one possibility is, and I'm not sure if this is really the right way of doing it. I think it's whether the CAC wants to make a response to the draft at all as a group. My personal feeling is that we're all going to be individuals, we're all going to be able to participate when we can provide our own input. But that's the only thing that came to mind as far as, when I saw the action, whether that we as a group might want to do something, but I'm not real in favor of that.
Mr. Chairman? If I could make a suggestion. So this meeting tonight is essentially to inform you about the release of the draft. And since you don't meet in August, when you meet at the end of September, if you do want to make comments as a group, you're welcome to come to the September meeting with all of your comments. You're welcome to form a subcommittee to review the draft. And we could put on the agenda for September your discussion of your comments, and those could be formalized and before the September 30th deadline and brought to the authority as part of the comments received. So that's an option.
Any members of the committee have any comments on that?
Lindsay, I'm just curious, do you think that at the September meeting that you might be able to give us an idea of how these citizen outreach workshops went, and then if the members of CAC had some questions that they could add on to that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, certainly. We'll still have I think you meet September 26th, somewhere kind of near the end. So we should have a pretty decent idea of kind of what's been said, what's most popular, what kind of ideas have risen to the top. And all the workshops should be complete by then, so we can definitely share with you what we have, at least in preliminary form. I think, and at that point, Martin and I can come back together and can provide input on the actual CTP itself, or if you think of a brilliant idea between then and September 30th, you can submit it to the tool as well.
One other thing I just happen to think of, I know you said that you don't have a date for the television on
the town hall yet?
The
telephone
town hall, right. And I was thinking that sometimes I watch city council meetings at home on cable, and I was wondering if that's the form that you were planning on using.
I think Martin actually made that suggestion as well himself, that perhaps we video one of the workshops or specifically do a presentation to a city council and ask CCTV to tape it, to show it as well. So we're going to try to kind of make that happen within the schedule of outreach.
Well, why don't we have staff put on a placeholder agenda item for kind of a progress to date in the outreach effort. If anyone wants to pull together comments and have the committee consider them, let me know by around the end of the first week in September by email, and we can upgrade the agenda item at that time. Does that meet with the needs of the committee? Well, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to reports. Head of the Authority Board. I'm not going to I'll just paraphrase some of the major parts that haven't been covered in the presentations tonight. Some of the things on the consent calendar, seeing the kind of early stage items on projects that are just really beginning to get going. The I-80 San Pablo Dam Road interchange, the I-680 SR4 interchange. They are working on phase 3, but as Martin indicated, there is really no funding for any other phase at this point. In fact, I'm not even sure phase 3 is fully funded, but they're starting on some early work there. And we're requesting MTC to fund 2 pedestrian bicycle overcrossing projects, one in San Pablo and one in Brentwood, and various extensions and contracts for our federal legislative advocacy and public information for the 2014 CTP were approved. First regular agenda item, I definitely state that, as I think we're all aware, the city of Hercules has gone through some very difficult times. And as they've begun to pull it together, I think we have seen established a more cooperative relationship between the authority and the city, to the point now where we're looking at the authority taking over the management role of the Hercules Intermodal Transit Center. So they're just beginning to get work on that. I believe a memorandum of understanding and a development more of a work plan for the authority to undertake this, and probably apply for a Tiger grant from the federal government. So I think the authority is helping Hercules as much as it can, consistent with protecting its own interests, to get this project on track and moving forward, and especially assisting in the staff work area where Hercules has not got the firepower yet to continue it on their own. Of course, the second item we've pretty well covered tonight, and that was the release of the transportation plan and the comprehensive project and program list. The one item that underwent some discussion by the full authority board was, as Martin has indicated, this proposal to include the Iron Horse Trail and BART as routes of regional significance. Actually, as I understand it, formally naming these would invoke a whole bunch of rules that were never designed to apply to non-roadway projects. So staff is trying to work out a compromise and a way of moving forward through these difficulties. And so we'll just have to wait and see. In essence, the vote that was taken by the authority board was to release the CTP and wait to further review work by staff on this issue. The other thing I found particularly noteworthy in the executive director's comments, there's been a pilot program outside of the city of Tokyo called Optical Dots. And apparently it is I don't know any of the details, but apparently they are finding that the spacing and shape of the dots can influence the speed of the traveling public. I assume this may be something like the elephant tracks that we're familiar with on the freeways, which warn us that the far right-hand lane will be ending. so that if we need to get over, we have a warning. So I think it's just another way of informing the drivers of situations they might not be immediately aware of, and it tends to influence their driving habits. So we will be looking for locations to test the dots here in Contra Costa County. As you may remember, we've been kind of offering ourselves now. This is the third program I can think of. We've offered ourselves as possible a test site for the autonomous driving vehicle of Google. And there was one other, I think we were offering ourselves as a possible test site. So not only are we, as an authority, doing what we do, but we are going a little bit beyond to try to encourage new innovative ways of dealing with transportation issues. So, the last item we have, any comments or suggestions on future agenda items? We have quite a list of what we might possibly have.
I had a question. I noticed that in one part of the presentation they showed a charging station, and with the advent of all electric cars and the improvement of battery technology, I think the range of the Nissan Leaf is 84 miles, and there are some companies that provide a battery charging service that you subscribe to once, and then you get a list of where they're at. Do we have a listing, a map of all the charging stations in the county?
Actually, I believe Contra Costa 511 has, or 511 Contra Costa, I get confused. Either way, they have created a map of all the EV charging stations in the county, and I'm happy to request that. Maybe we could include it as an email out to all of you.
Stephen, as you know, the affordable housing challenge is kind of near and dear to me. And I just had this idea today when I was just getting exasperated by all the lack of affordable housing. I was just thinking maybe it's a good idea if we could maybe approach one of our state representatives to either have them or a staff person come and give us the state thoughts on how affordable housing can be implemented, and see what the ideas are out there. Because I would imagine that this is something that's being wrestled in the state legislature, and we might be able to get a real comprehensive discussion on it from one of our representatives, or most probably a staff person.
Well, I've also heard that various ideas are under consideration in this. We can certainly inquire whether one of our state representatives would have a staffer that could make a presentation. I don't know whether the authorities, Sacramento legislative advocate, would be a resource to check with on this.
To Dave's comment on one of the lobbying forays that I was on, when I mentioned those dismal figures, the politician we were lobbying was rather stunned and and directed one of her staff to check it out.
Is there anything else on future agenda items? Thank you for your ideas. So I will declare us adjourned until Wednesday, the 24th of September.